Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Bringing Art to Local Parks, the New York City Parks Art in the Parks program. So, thank you, everyone, for supporting Partnerships of Parks. Whether you're new or have already been working with us in our local parks, we feel that today and tonight will be a very helpful training for many people interested in the subject we'll cover today. I am Pedro Garcia. I'm the training manager for Partnerships for Parks, and I am your regular host for these webinars, workshops, the Partnerships Academy webinars and workshops. Um, so tonight we have a packed agenda, so I want to make sure I give our speakers time, and also I want to share with you guys our agenda. So let me do that now so you guys can see what we'll cover tonight. I also did a promotion for this event, and I wanted to make our program language accessible. Si alguien necesita una traducción de lo que vamos a presentar, este es el momento para decirme y poner su nombre en la sección que dice chat e indicar que necesitan traducción de la presentación esta noche. Entonces, díganme en este momento, escríbanlo en el chat, por favor. Bringing art to local parks. New York City Parks Art in the program. And today with Partnerships Parks, we'll present to you much information, right? Our agenda tonight will be introducing the work for Partnerships for Parks, right? We'll do a short poll question. Then we'll get to know the staff from New York City Parks and the works in arts and antiquities. They'll be speaking for a short time, right? We'll also hear from a guest artist that has worked with arts and antiquities and can really speak on her experiences. We'll also hear from one of our outreach coordinators, and they can talk to you about the ways in which you can connect with New York City Parks through their efforts and their work. We would like to leave the questions for the end, right? You could type them as the workshop goes in the chat area, but we will definitely try to answer them at the end when all the speakers are done talking. And then by the end, I'll be able to share some takeaways with you, okay? So what I'll do now is first a quick poll just to gauge on people's interests for tonight. So who are we? Partnerships for Parks, right? We are, our parent organizations are City Parks Foundation, who's a nonprofit, right? Along with agency in New York City Parks. And together, right, they've come to form up and help and shape Partnerships for Parks. So Partnerships for Parks comes as a joint effort from these two organizations. Think of them as our parents. And Partnerships for Parks supports a growing network of neighborhood volunteers with the efforts to maintain and beautify the parks with tools and resources, right? To better understand our parent organizations, here's some information about City Parks Foundation and New York City Parks so you can understand the difference in the work that they do, right? So City Parks Foundation is an independent nonprofit, offers free programs in public parks, summer stay, citywide performing arts festival, a variety of sports and arts and education programs. And thriving parks means thriving communities for us. New York City Parks, right, is an agency of New York City government, maintains and operates city park systems, offers a variety of park programs. Volunteers work with park staff and process to care for the park. And the vision of New York City Parks is to create and sustain thriving parks and public spaces for New Yorkers. So for us in Partnerships for Parks, right, we think of ourselves as doing the work of those agencies to coming together and think of our work as these sort of pillars, right, of the work that we do. We support year-round opportunities like painting benches or many other ways to beautify your local park. Like tonight, for example, the information that will be shared might inspire you to get involved in a project like that, right? So we support those kind of initiatives and projects. We offer trainings, like this is part of a series of trainings that I lead, right, and that we bring to you from Partnerships for Parks. It might involve many different guests or collaborators that could bring you new information or knowledge. We have staff support to provide people that want to work with us in partnership with parks. Our outreach team can help groups connect with resources that you might need in order to help you navigate the New York City park system. What we also provide is community coaching, which is provides personalized support for groups. So that's another part of our pillars, right? And tonight we'll also talk about funding for projects. And one thing that Partnership Park does is we offer a small grants program, which offers funding for projects such as events, tools, and other marketing materials. So that's a little bit about Partnerships for Parks and what we do. What we'll do next is get to meet Naomi Rodriguez and Elizabeth Masella. And they work for New York City Parks. And they will talk to us about their Arts and Antiquities program and public art in the parks. So without further ado, I'll let them share their screen. Take it away, ladies.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Elizabeth Masella. I'm the Senior Public Art Coordinator at NYC Parks, and I'm joined by my colleague, Naomi Rodriguez, our Public Art Coordinator at NYC Parks. Hello. And we're just going to share some an overview of our program, what we do, the different kinds of projects we do, and then walk you through the process that all proposals go through. We're happy to answer questions at the very end. I think Pedro will open up then. If there's anything that is unclear, we're always happy to explain that. I am going to share my screen. So the Art in the Parks program, we are part of the New York City Parks Department. We permit temporary public art projects citywide. We're just a small team of 2 people, just Naomi and I. We do about anywhere, but I guess an average year would be about 60 projects a year. Last year, we did 86, which is a lot. We are part of the Art and Antiquities division. The other part of our division oversees the care of our public monuments in our permanent collection. There's over 800 monuments, plaques, permanent artworks throughout the city in parks. And then on our end is the temporary public art program. We consider ourselves, between the monuments and the temporary public art, New York City's greatest public gallery. And we also say, I don't know how true this is, but we're the world's largest outdoor public gallery. If anyone else wants to challenge that, we're happy to hear that. If you need any kind of information about monuments or temporary public art, this is the place to go for that. We have information about both programs as well as the map that you see here, which shows all of the permanent and temporary public artworks on view in parks. In addition to the monuments and temporary public art, we also oversee the Arsenal Gallery in the NYC Parks headquarters in Central Park at the Arsenal. Right now we have a show on view that looks at recent parks designs through the lens of the legacy of Frederick Law Olmsted. So that is the one indoor space that we oversee. So a lot of people might ask, why public art? Why the outdoor gallery? There's a lot of motivating factors. Every artwork is different. Every artist is different. Every community group has different goals, but these are kind of the main, reasons why people want public art and why people do public art. There's aesthetic reasons, beautification, visual enhancement of your park space, maybe bringing attention to the park, activating a certain part of the park. There's the intellectual reasoning, mental stimulation, getting people to think, parks is everybody's backyard. When we put a public artwork in there, it does get people to think differently about their park or, perhaps issues that the artwork is about. Public art can also be social, participatory. It invites people to engage with it in a lot of different ways, directly or, engage with it in a more passive way. Public art can also be an economic driver, supporting tourism in the creative class, creating a place in a park that brings people there, what they call placemaking. It can also be promotional, advancing parks' mission to create welcoming spaces for all. So, I mean, that's just a few reasons, but there's many reasons why, people pursue public art. I'm just going to go through a few examples to show you, what public art can be. It's not, any one thing. I think public art can take many forms. I think sometimes a lot of people think big sculpture, which is what you're seeing here. It doesn't necessarily have to be that, and it doesn't need to be, formal. It can be playful. It can be educational, any number of factors. This is a project from the Art Students League that students were studying there created these 3 sculptures, and this is in Riverside Park. I think this was 2019 to 2020. This is a piece by Nicholas Holliber. This was on the Broadway malls on the west side of Manhattan. So this also shows not every park is your green space. This is part of a long string of essentially medians running the length of Broadway, but parks themselves take many forms. This is a piece by artist Tanda Francis in Queensbridge Park that is still on view for about 2 more weeks. And this was part of a project called the Plywood Protection Project, where artists reused plywood that was used to board up stores in 2020. This organization collected that and then distributed it to artists to create public artworks. Public artwork can be immersive. This is a piece by Rose DeCiano in Prospect Park. This is also currently on view. She used archival photos from the Prospect Park Alliance's archives. So it is educational, but it's also, something people can really interact with and be a part of. This is another interactive piece by artist Sean Desiree. This was in Crotona Park last year. It has musical instruments that people can play. This is another interactive piece in Rafferty Triangle with an organization called Hive Public Space. I think these, if I recall correctly, has the words printed on here as sentiments shared by people in the community. This is another interactive piece, but also a functional piece that created seating at Kelch Park. This is by an artist named Chat Travieso. It shared information about Bronx music, but it also created this kind of sheltered resting place in this busy hub of a park. Not every artwork needs to be 3-dimensional. We do a lot of fence installations, especially in the last couple of years. It's a great way, a lower cost way to do an artwork, but with a high impact. This one is in Dr. Green Playground in Brownsville, and this was a joint collaboration between Joel Artista and the Brownsville Houses Neighborhood Stat Team as a community project. But as you can see, it's just vinyl banners, but it really brightens up the space. We also do, some projects that might be a little more unexpected. This is by a photographer named Adrienne Sass, and she created these adhesive graphics that wrap water fountains in Riverside Park. The source photos are of water sources that are part of the watershed that provides New York City's water, so it's educational as well. In addition to the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional public art, we also permit murals. This one is in Concrete Plant Park on a shipping container that is used for park operations. The artists are Stephanie Vidal and Fernando Leon. And I believe we worked with Partnerships for Parks on this one. And then this one is another mural. We don't have a ton of spaces for murals, but we do have a lot of low retaining walls. This one was kind of sad beforehand. And this is a community mural by artists Lena Montoya and Jody Darial at Skyline Playground in Staten Island. So I hope, these slides here get you thinking about all the different types of projects that we permit. And it doesn't just have to be one thing or be really big, or, it can be a lot of different things. In addition to all the different types of artworks we permit, we work with a lot of different public art organizations citywide. There's some nonprofit organizations that are specifically geared towards public art programming. These are just a few here: Public Art Fund, Creative Time, and More Art. We also work with parks partner organizations. These are some of the big ones: Socrates Sculpture Park, Friends of the High Line, and Madison Square Park Conservancy. But we also work with a lot of community groups and friends groups on a more local community level. We work with business improvement districts. Times Square Alliance, Hudson Yards, Hell's Kitchen Alliance, and Dumbo Business Improvement District are just a few of them. We work with commercial galleries, as well as cultural institutions and museums. This is just a few of them here. A lot of cultural institutions we work with have done programming in and around where they are located. So there's that local sense there. We also work with independent artists who are just doing these projects on their own. They're not affiliated with an institution or organization. These are just a few examples, again, showing you quite a variety in scale and to demonstrate, what independent artists can do. I think at this point, I'll turn it over to Naomi Rodriguez, my colleague, and she can just walk you through an overview of the application process, artist and exhibitor responsibilities, review process, and paperwork. And Naomi, when you want me to go to the next slide, just let me know.
Sure. So the submission guidelines. So it does start with a written description of the work, which is basically to describe the inspiration behind the piece and the reasoning, which could include the who, what, where's, and whys of why the piece is, why you wanted to install it in one of our sites. That does include, however, how you want it to install it, which is very important because that will also determine if the site is suitable. So for example, people can install onto grass sites, concrete, or if it weighs more than 800 pounds, it can just be freestanding. In order to make those determinations, we do need the height, width, depth, weight, also renderings of the work. And if the work already exists, a photo would be fabulous. After that, we definitely will need a artist statement and resume, just so that we have more of an idea as to what the artist has done in the past. And the installation budget, just so we get a sense of what the installation entails. Now, any art piece, any exhibition cannot be up for more than a year, because then it goes into the Public Design Commission, which is a multi-year process. It's a multi-year process that we do not oversee. So anything up to a year is what we can grant from our office. So location, also to determine the suitability. Also, it would be recommended just to see if we can list up to maybe 3 locations, just in case the first location is already taken. Since we do work on a rolling deadline, there could be an artist that is interested in the site that you are also interested in. Next slide. So after we get all of that, then we do an internal review with our office, just to see that we did receive everything and that everything is good to go to the park managers. Now, the park managers, they are on site daily. So they'll be able to let us know if it will work in the space. If they determine that it will and that it's safe, then we go to the borough commissioners. And the sister agency if required. So sister agency, including Department of Buildings, if the structure is above, I believe, 10 feet. Also, if it requires anything from Department of Transportation, they would need to get those permits in before we can say yes. Now, if all of that is handed in and everything is good to go, then we would then go to the community board to make sure that there is community buy-in for this installation. Then we would meet on site with everybody involved, including myself, the artist, park manager. And then from there, we just start the paperwork process and the artist will be good to go on installation. Oh, that was a slide, sorry. So as you can see, these are the criteria that does need to be met when it comes to approving these installations. Artistic merit, so we do have to make sure that it is a high caliber installation and that the artist can meet that criteria with providing their resume, site suitability, again, based on site size and scale. So for example, if we do have a huge sculpture like the first slide you saw in Riverside Park with the Art Students League, that type of sculpture would not work in, let's say, Morningside. So it just all depends on what the sculpture is, what the artist has made. And again, not only sculptures, this also includes vinyl banners. So making sure with vinyl banners, for example, that there are sight lines, they're not overpowering space. So it's not a one size fits all. It's just basically working with what the artist has given us and trying to make sure that it works for the space and for the public. Okay, so we would like to know the fabrication costs and the installation and the installation costs, just because it is something that perhaps might not be on the forefront, but all of that does need to be taken into account, including the maintenance. So the maintenance, for example, if someone were to come and let's say the pizzas get vandalized, that is on the artist to make sure that it is remedied, whatever the case may be, whether it's graffiti or if someone hit it with something else. But with that does come general liability insurance. So whether it's a sculpture or vinyl banner or a mural, well, not a mural, sorry. We do require a certificate of insurance, and that is to make sure that everybody is covered in case there is vandalism or in case somebody interacts with the sculpture or installation in a way that requires insurance to be paid out. The bond definitely is something that we hold. So the bond check does range from $500 to $10,000. And it's just to make sure that the site is remedied. So however the artist found it, that's how they need to leave it. And we hold that check until all parties are satisfied, which means the park manager and the artist and ourselves. And here is our information. And I didn't really cover murals, but murals is something that we definitely do, and it is very much similar to the submission requirements that we recommend for 3D works of art. The only difference is that the COI is not quite the same if it's a smaller scale project. That's mostly worked on waivers. But we can definitely answer any questions if anybody has interest in doing murals.
Oh, and we're always happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. So I'm sure Pedro will share our contact information at the end, but if you want to take it down here, we're always just an email or phone call away. So that's basically a general overview of our program. There's a lot of information to pack in. We can answer any questions you have that might be more specific than what we shared here, but I wanted to then introduce next an artist who we've worked with before, who can kind of give you some perspective on the other side of the process. I am very happy to introduce Yvonne Short, who is an artist, and she also does a lot of work through the Rego Park. Rego Park Green Alliance. I always forget what the G is. But we've worked with Yvonne on a lot of community-based projects since 2016, which is about as long as I've been at Parks as well. I was just saying to Yvonne before, I feel like we've grown together. So Yvonne's going to share some information about some of the community projects that she's done and kind of how the process works on her end. So I will turn it over to Yvonne.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So my name is Yvonne, and I'm an artist and an advocate within public spaces. I'm just going to take you through a set of projects that I did over a couple of years in one particular space and try and just explain my process and just the way that certain things happened within the spaces. And hopefully that will help answer some questions or give you some ideas in terms of projects. So we can go to the next slide. So I live in, I lived in Queens in Rego Park and then in Forest Hills. And there was a park called McDonald Park, or there is a park called McDonald Park. And there's a lot of things that were going on in the park, from litter to, there's a lot of love in the park and a lot of people care for it, but there was a lot of litter as well. And we have people who are grappling with mental illness and homelessness. And I really wanted to use public art as a way to engage the community in some way. And the park really didn't have any public art except for one monumental piece that had been there for many, many years. So I thought I would start. And so I got to know the art for, I got to know Elizabeth first and then Naomi as well. And basically the first project that I did there was called Functional Bodies. I came up with a concept with a couple, with the people in the park. So it was really important to get to know, to make sure that you have that relationship, I think. I mean, you don't have to, but for me, it was really important with what I was trying to achieve, to say, you know, to be a volunteer in the park, to also know who the friends of McDonald Park were, to assist in ways that I could, because these parks really rely heavily on volunteers to explain my vision of what I wanted to do. So I wanted to create a piece that was a beautification within the park. One thing to note is that if you want to put art in the park, you do not get, you know, the Parks Department doesn't fund you directly. So most of the time, so is that, I mean, sometimes they will team up with like Flushing Meadow Corona Park or someone else, but the funding, usually you have to come up with that yourself. So as a nonprofit organization or as an independent artist. So that's really important thing to do. So when I first came up with the idea of kind of beautifying the space, I talked to the council member and I set up a meeting with her. I said what my vision was. I let her know that I was volunteering in the park. I had friends of McDonald Park very involved. And so everyone was rooting for me. I talked to the community board. And so she gave an allocation of funding. With that allocation of funding, then I was able to kind of put together a proposal where I talked about what it was that I wanted to do within the park landscape. And then I submitted that proposal. It's very much what Naomi just took you through. So it was really important with public art, of course, to know if it's going to be there for a year, the kind of materials that you're using are really important and different than if you're putting something, say, indoors. And then how, because people interact with your piece in many different ways that you cannot even dream of. So just making sure to think about those. And I think that one of the things that I started to do was become very much interested in looking at other public art and not just looking at it, but seeing how is it bolted down? How much did it weigh? All of these other things I think were really important within the landscape of the work. And then sometimes you can even, you know, put out something put out a call to someone and say, hey, I'm looking for an architect or carpenter to review my plans, or an engineer. I mean, the engineers, though, they will make sure it is like, there's no like, oh, I just need it to last for a year. If an engineer gets involved, they're building it to last forever. So that really increases the cost sometimes, but that's just something to note when you do ask an engineer to get involved, which is, is very important. So just to think about that when you're thinking of your project. So this was the first project that I kind of went through, and I submitted the paperwork probably 6 months before to give them some time to work through it, because they are only 2 people within an office and they have to do a lot of projects. So that was the first one that I did within the park landscape. And then after doing the first one, you can go to the next slide. I decided, because of everything that was going on in the park and putting up the first one and it being well received, that I really wanted to think about this issue that was really bothering me within the community. There's a very wealthy group of, or people with a lot of money, and then there are a group of people who don't have much. And I really wanted to explore questions. So I talked again to the community and I let them know that this was something I was interested in doing. And so this project involves, I brought on CUNY City University students from the 5 boroughs. I had 5 different students that helped from 5 different city university colleges. And we designed the structure, and we really wanted to delve into why did so few have what so many need? And so we designed it using SketchUp. So this was a great kind of project that there was one level where you kind of go in and you talk with the community. And then there's another level as an artist where you're kind of sharing your skills and people are sharing their ideas, and they're really helping you to design it and build it. So these students were all at university. Some of them knew SketchUp and Rhino, some didn't. So there was a lot of learning that went on. And we designed this piece that kind of at night it would light up, and there was basically all of these stairs, and there was arrows pointing to carrots. And at the top, the top level had no stairs to get to, and that all the way at the top were the carrots. And so the idea was, no matter how hard you tried, you were never going to get to those carrots, because the stairs that you needed, the one set to get up there, were missing. And so we put that out there. And because it was something we really wanted to talk to the community about, we made sure to stay close to the art, and we talked to people about this project. And this was the first time where not only did the council member fund it, but we got people who were interested in this topic to kind of come on board. We shared it on social media, shared it with other donors who had donated to other nonprofits who we thought that this might make a very interesting issue for them to donate to, because it really involved a long build time and a lot of learning for the students as well. We made molds and cast the rabbits. We cast many rabbits because we thought that they could get broken. So we just wanted to make sure that after we designed them and then we cast them in cement, that we cast a couple of more just in case, because the smaller something is, the more likely something will happen. And then again, because this was under the 800 pounds, what we did with this one was we filled it with sandbags on the inside. There's also a light in there that turns on. And when the light comes on, you would see a little rabbit inside holding his carrot. So that was another thing that we designed. And you can go to the next slide. So what happens, because this was a very controversial piece, and sometimes it's not, sometimes they're not controversial pieces and things can happen. So it is really important to think about that when you're putting something in, maybe just to stay close to the work a little bit, go by the park, every couple, just as much as you can, so that you can see what's going on with the work, have conversations with the community. At least that was something that was important to me. So in this case, the work was vandalized. We put little plastic windows in because we wanted, when the light came on at night, for you to be able to see like these kind of curtains in all the windows, except for the one where you could see the rabbit. And somebody vandalized it. And so they broke one of the windows. And so our immediate thought was, let's fix it. And then we thought, wait a minute, yes, we want to fix it, but we want to tell the story of what's going on, because this piece was meant to have a conversation around. So we put a broken window and we put the date. And then people started emailing us, asking us who broke the window? Why was the window broken? How could they help? Maybe we could talk about the park a little bit, and how could we help the people that were in the park? And so because of this thing that happened, which to some would be considered negative, it really sparked the community. And of course, we were always out there as well talking about it. And one of the rabbits was broken. And so we put a little kind of outline and we said DOA and we put the date, dead on arrival. And we took a picture, we made a little website for it and a little Facebook page, and we posted things that were happening. Somebody chalked right in front of it and said, this is socialism. So we had a lot of conversations around this piece over the course of the year. We went into schools, we went into high schools, middle schools, senior centers. And of course, we were out with the piece and having conversations. And so it led to a great opportunity for action. So you can go to the next slide. So what ended up happening was we decided to come together because we knew someone had said in the winter, it's really cold in the park. Could we crochet? I'd like to crochet some scarves. So we were like, this is awesome. Why don't you meet us in the park and let's have a crochet day? And so 30 people came. Some people knew how to crochet, some didn't. They all learned. And while we were there, we decided that somebody should go around and give the scarves out. So 4 people said they would do that. And they stayed in contact with the people who were either homeless or who were having some kind of mental illness, or some of the things were going on. We did other things such as little knapsacks, and we gave people food in the park. We had conversations. We had healthcare workers on site that come in and have conversations with us about how to handle this and to kind of check in on those who were in need within the park system. And we were able to help them. And one person in particular was able to get housing and ultimately get work as well. That took around 2 years. But it's something that for me as a public artist is really important to the work, as well as to kind of be recognizing that these parks, oftentimes there a lot going on in them, in all of these parks. And it's really an opportunity to create beautiful things, but to also have conversations which sometimes can really stir us into action. And this one, again, was kind of self-initiated. You can go to the next slide. And then what happened was, after this one ended, people emailed me and they were like, hey, COVID is happening. It's really depressing. It's really sad. Can you create a public art piece that talks about the resilience of the community? So we created a public art piece. We worked with a couple of people to learn wood burning and how to cut wood and measure wood. And then I sculpted and welded. We had welding sessions so others could learn how to weld as well. So it was a great way to kind of empower the community and to empower myself. And to learn as I went from those in the community as well. So there was a beautiful reciprocity that happened within the scope of the community. And what I really loved was it was community initiated. So in a park where oftentimes, there was no public art and I was initiating, people came and asked, they initiated. And then something really beautiful happened as well. Another thing, which was that somebody who was aligned with my interest within the park and had watched the trajectory of these 3 projects gave a really fat check to help with creating public art in parks. So that was really nice as well. And that really helped me to understand as well that oftentimes, as artists, we're searching, we can sometimes be searching for funding and all these other things, but sometimes we don't even know our power, or we don't know the relationships that we're developing. And we have to be able to adapt. And we learn a lot, we're humbled. And sometimes people are seeing what we're doing and they are helping us in many different ways, from cutting a check to cleaning up the space around the piece, which is just really lovely to see as well. So I want to end with just some of the things that I've learned. So if you go to the last slide, my kind of lessons learned was to engage the park and other stakeholders early in the process. I really felt it was important for a piece of art if people were vested. You have lots of people going through the park, doing lots of things in the park with your art that you may or may not imagine. And so having people vested also helps for people to feel a sense of ownership with the work that's there. Find advocates in the community for what you are doing. So I think it was really important when we engaged with the second project, we teamed up with so many groups within the community, nonprofits, just volunteers, friends, to have conversations. And we didn't even know all of the people that really were thinking about this and that could help us to delve deeper into, this question. So it was really important kind of look in many different places for advocates. Stay close to the art. I think for me, it was really important, especially with the second piece, to really stay close. I mean, the third piece was beautiful as well. They were all beautiful for very different reasons. But I think coming around and checking on your artwork, seeing how people are interacting with it, it can even help you to think about how to stabilize your piece in the future, or different materials that you may want to use, seeing how people are working with the materials. Delve deep. So for me, that was like, sometimes, I mean, the work is always deep from within us as artists, but sometimes there's things that we're grappling with, and you have to really delve inward, and then think of the art as a way to kind of share that out, or to even sometimes just for yourself to make sense of what's happening, and other people are touched by that, and so many different things can happen. Be inspired by your surroundings. I think that's very easy to understand. And funders come from many different sources, including those who share your goals, ideas. I think as a community of artists often, or even nonprofits, we're taught that there's one way of going about getting funding in, but there are these, I think it's really important that one of the projects that I was working on was really about trying to bring the community together. And I was able to galvanize funders, not from the nonprofit sector or the council member, but other funders who were just everyday individuals who were really interested in what I was talking about, and who have come on as supporters and have continued to support many of the parks that I'm in. So I work in a lot of parks and create a lot of different artwork in little garden spaces, public parks, places that I have gone in and just kind of taken over because they've been rat infested. So I'm really committed. On any given day, I'm usually walking around to something that I've kind of taken ownership of, and trying, and with the community, of course, over time, to make it a space for all, regardless of how much we make or where we come from. But just public spaces, really, it should be accessible for all of us, and we all deserve that, and we all should have it. So that's really the end of my presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you for all of that presentation. A lot of good information there, definitely with the community work, the art, and also potential ideas for funding. There was a question in the chat that I think leads to our next presenter, which is, accessing or connecting parks to groups of volunteers. So our next presenter is going to be Vlad, who will really speak on those ways you can make the connections.
Thank you, Pedro. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vlad Cruz. I am one of the outreach directors for Partnerships for Parks, one of two. And I work along a team of outreach coordinators to serve as that front-facing liaison team between the community and the city agency. So I know that Angela had a question regarding connecting with park managers, and that's what our team is here for you guys. So Pedro, if you could just move on to the next slide. I'll try to go through this very quickly. We're here for you, and I know that a lot of you have a lot of questions. So we'd love to give you that time to answer those questions. So as I'd mentioned, the outreach coordinators are that first point of contact. They're on the front lines, front facing with our community partners, which would be people who run friends of groups for their local parks, to peer partners. So those are other nonprofits that may be working in conjunction with the city agency or with partnerships for parks like conservancies, as well as the city agency itself. So they're that first point of contact in case you have an idea for a project, or if you want to lead a stewardship initiative within your park, they would be the ones to help you. OCs have worked with hundreds of park groups. Just yesterday, I was looking at our numbers, and our numbers are growing in terms of the park groups that we help in stewarding their local green spaces, and they help to connect you with the appropriate people and access the resources that you need to steward your local green space. So what they can provide support with is group formation and structure. So they would put you in contact with our technical assistance team, who might help you or our volunteer team who helps to lead It's My Park projects, which are our largest stewardship and volunteer projects in our program. And you start from there and sort of build some sort of reputation as a steward for your community, connecting to resources. So as Pedro mentioned, our program is able to support grants for any programming or any other stewardship initiatives that you may have for your green space, project planning and support, navigating the behemoth that is New York City Parks, and working within a city agency, and general goal setting. So if you do have a group that wants to work on a green space and you want to, either grow grass where grass isn't growing, or involve more people in the community, the outreach coordinators will be there to help you along the way. Next slide, please. So if you're new to this and you're not too sure where to start, whether or not you want to have an art exhibition within a park or even just lead a cleanup, the first thing to do is to talk to your OC. There are 13 OCs throughout New York City. There are 2 in the Bronx, 4 in Manhattan, 3 in Brooklyn right now, 1 in Staten Island, and 3 in Queens. And what they can do is help you navigate the park structure itself. So by that, I mean, if you want to avoid redundancies because there's already an existing group, they can help you to connect with that group and make sure that whatever it is that you want to see in that park gets done by working alongside fellow citizens. Or if you are, around a park space or a green space that needs that tender love and care that a Friends of group can provide, then they might offer you those resources to start those groups, connecting with neighbors that may have goals to see that those green spaces are activated, creating a core group and shared vision amongst those people, introducing yourself to the community. So not only depending on the people who live in the community, but working with local businesses if they have something to offer, and organizing events and service projects. So as I'd mentioned, leading cleanups or even plantings, that's something that you may be able to do. So in the following slide that Pedro sort of went ahead to, we have here Linda Bonilla, who is our senior outreach coordinator in the Bronx, and she's responsible for a big number of community boards. If you're familiar with the Bronx has the most amount of parks land space, and it has a lot of what we call administrative parks. So parks like Crotona Park, which Elizabeth had mentioned, that had an art installation, as well as Claremont, Pelham Bay Park. This team is responsible with working with those park administrators, but for those other small parks, they sort of work with community boards and other local groups to steward those groups. So that'll be it for outreach, but I'm hoping that I can answer any more questions that come up during the Q&A.
Thank you, Vlad. So some grants and resources, right? We support and strengthen outreach program planning capacity dedicated to community groups who care for the neighborhood, whether it's parks, playgrounds, street trees, green trees, or community gardens. But for us, for Partnerships with Parks, in order to receive funding, your project must be approved first by New York City Parks. So Naomi and Elizabeth went over the application process and how to go about it. So once they approve it, then you could apply and probably see if you could access grants through Partnerships with Parks. But it must be in New York City Parks property. But the people applying, it doesn't have to be a 501c3. I see that people were asking Yvonne about her nonprofit status. You don't have to be a 501c3 to receive grants from us through Partnerships with Parks. So I wanted to make sure to cover that. I also sent a tip sheet tomorrow with guidelines and ways to apply for funding through us. So stay tuned for some resources after the workshop. What I want to do is really go over some of those questions, though, because I know there were several questions that were being asked. I think Vlad was able to answer how to help connect parks, right? And then one question I think maybe goes back to Elizabeth and Naomi, is the process for mural painted on a retaining wall the same process?
Yeah, I can speak to that. And it just leads me to bring up another point. So if it's on a retaining wall that's within a park, you would submit a mural proposal showing the design, what the wall is that you want to paint. And that does go through our process. And we would also check with our operations staff to make sure that they feel that a mural is appropriate on the retaining wall. Not all of them are in great condition, or there might be plans to, construction plans. We don't have a ton of parks owned walls for murals. We don't allow murals on like parks buildings. We get a lot of requests for people who want to paint murals on handball courts. We've talked to a number of handball court player associations, and if you put a colorful design on the wall, it does make it difficult to see the ball. So I just want to mention that. But because we don't have a ton of eligible surfaces in parks for murals, we have worked with organizations and artists, or like community gardens, where they put a mural on a private wall that's adjoining the park or the garden, which is totally fine. But you'd need to get written permission from the building owner to paint a mural on their wall. And we would still just want to know what it is that you plan to do, since a lot of people see it as part of the park. But, if we don't have a ton of parks owned walls available, there is always the private wall route, with just the caveat that you're getting permission to do so.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Another question that I collected, is it possible to do a mural decal on the asphalt of a park?
Yeah, we've done some ground murals. I know Naomi worked on one recently in Rockaway, which was a little, the elements didn't treat it so great. So it's definitely possible to do like an adhesive, mural decal. And I think it would be thinking about what kind of surface it is. I think the short answer is we're happy to try it. The long answer is we've had mixed results on it.
Yeah, it'll definitely have to be a shorter installation, like 3 months or so max, just because of the elements and the traffic.
So then another question is, can you clarify, how do we select the artwork that we want in our park, or does the artist propose the artwork?
So our program kind of works in two different ways. Sometimes we have artists who come to us or an organization or a group has, their neighborhood park that they want to do a public artwork in. If there is a local group there, we want to, connect the artist with that group to make sure that, it wouldn't impact any other plans they have going on. But if an artist doesn't have a location in mind, we work with them to find a location. If you are a group or you live near a park that you really want to see some public art in, we're happy to, keep you in mind for public art exhibitions. We are always looking for groups and parks that really want the public art and are open-minded about, what kind of, artwork you might see in your park. So it's kind of if groups want to seek out artists, like you can do outreach yourselves. If there are local artists that you're aware of and you would like to work with them collaboratively, there's also local arts councils. Every borough has an arts council, which, they have a lot of connections to artists in your borough. We've worked with some groups as well who have done an open call. Typically an open call is offering a little bit of funding to the artists, but that is a great way to actively solicit, artworks. And the money that you're offering doesn't need to be a lot. It could be a few $100s, depending on the scale of the work that you're looking for. But if you are, looking for an artist, also our website, we have all of the projects that have happened in Parkland for the last 20 years. That might give you some ideas of artists you might want to reach out to, or just types of projects that you might want to pursue.
All right, so then we have what do you officially call the printer mural that was see-through? I like the idea for a proposal.
I guess we just call it a fence installation, right, Naomi? It's on a vinyl mesh.
Yeah, vinyl banner mesh. Yeah.
I think it's the mesh one that I put it in there. It's the mesh is the material that's being used to print on an outdoor mesh. Many companies have it. You just provide the artwork and then they'll print it on there.
Yeah, there's a lot of companies that do that now too. They can print in many sizes. That one, I think, Naomi, was it was a big mural, but it was kind of on a number of banners.
Yeah, it was about 11 banners of different shapes and sizes to create one holistic picture. And it's usually tied with zip ties, so super light touch.
Another question we had was, if people do a meetup event, creating art in the park, e.g. knitting, painting, or sketching, do they have to get a permit to do that?
No, our permit is typically just for stationary objects, anything like an art workshop or a performance or a meetup in the park. That would just be a special event permit. And I think, I don't want to put partnerships on the spot, but you can help with those types of things.
I think for mine, when we did the knitting, because we had it at tables in the park, so we just put the stuff at the tables and people just came over. So it was just a group of people sitting in their local park at the tables, and we didn't need a permit for that.
Yeah, I'd add, as Elizabeth mentioned, things like that might usually fall under the purview of special events. So what the outreach coordinator could do is help connect you with their permits office in your respective borough. Some boroughs tend to have different rules depending on the space that they have and things like that. So it's always good to check in with the borough office.
We have another question, and it's about, do you maintain a registry of artists, or do we just email you if we want to be considered for parks outside of our location?
Yeah, I think our website is probably the best place to kind of see a quote unquote registry of artists. We don't really have the capacity to do a lot of matchmaking if we haven't gotten a proposal from an artist, because there's just the two of us. But you're welcome to email us if you're with a certain park, or you live near a certain park, you're like, I want to see public art here. We like to hear that. We're happy to work with you on that. But as far as soliciting artwork for a specific park, unfortunately, we just don't have the resources for that.
Another one just came in. What would the process look like if a park group wants to elicit artwork for a park?
So I think that can work two ways. Again, like the kind of casual, like, hey, we are, a group associated with this park. We would love to see more artwork. If anything comes in, just let us know. But if you wanted to specifically seek out artwork for your park, we can help work with you on an open call that you would send out to, local press or local arts organizations. You can always utilize social media, but we are happy to work with you on, what might work for your park and your community. Typically with an open call, in our experience, there is usually funding tied to it, but that is, you're saying in an open call, you're saying, we're seeking artworks for this park. This is the location. You don't always have to have a theme. Some people like to have a theme for the artwork, usually something tangential to their park. I think it's a more specific process that we can speak one-on-one. If you're interested in putting something together for your park, we're happy to have that conversation, but it kind of looks a little bit different for each park and each group and what they want to do. So that's, again, kind of a long answer to say, there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Well, thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Vlad. You guys provide a lot of information. So appreciate taking the time. We appreciate the questions from everybody as well. Um, we really want to let you know of more opportunities and more chances to get this kind of information. So I want to just everybody, that's the last part, right? I'm going to send you an email, everyone that registered, right, an evaluation form. Please give us feedback about tonight's workshop. Copy of the slideshow all the images and information that we share with you. Vlad mentioned the Irish coordinators to, have a point of contact as you try to work within a park and in the system, right? And all the resources mentioned as well, like guidelines on making applications or guidelines on how to apply for grants. We will have another workshop on May 18th, stewardship and other volunteer opportunities. So hope you come back and participate in our next session as well. But I want to say thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers and thank you to our audience.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.